The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of St. James's Palace, casting long shadows across the polished marble floors. Kate Middleton stood before an ornate mirror in her private chambers, her reflection showing a woman who had grown into her role with grace and determination. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the sapphire and diamond earrings that had once belonged to Princess Diana. Today marked 5 years since she had married Prince William, and the weight of those years felt both heavy and light at the same time. She could hear the gentle sounds of palace life beginning outside her door. Staff members moving quietly through the corridors, preparing for another day of royal duties. But today was different. Today carried a significance that made her heart race with anticipation and nervous energy. The small envelope on her dressing table held news that would change everything, and she had been waiting for the perfect moment to share it with William. Meanwhile, across London in a modest apartment in Kensington, Camilla Parker Bowles sat at her kitchen table, staring at the morning newspaper spread before her. The headlines spoke of royal engagements, charity events, and the growing popularity of the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge. Her fingers traced the edge of her teacup, the porcelain cold against her skin. The apartment felt smaller today, somehow more confining than usual. She had been Charles's companion for years now, through the storms and sunshine of their complicated relationship. Yet on mornings like this, she found herself wondering about the path not taken. The life that might have been if circumstances had been different. The telephone beside her remained silent, though she willed it to ring with news that would bring clarity to her uncertain position. Kate moved away from the mirror and walked to the window overlooking the palace gardens. The early morning joggers were making their rounds through the park, their lives simple and uncomplicated compared to the goldfish bowl existence she had come to know. She thought about her life before the royal family, when her biggest concern was managing her family's party planning business and deciding what to wear to university events. Those days seemed like a distant dream now. The constant scrutiny, the carefully planned public appearances, the weight of representing the crown in every gesture and word. Yet there had been moments of pure joy, too. The way William's eyes lit up when he spoke about their future, the warmth of the Queen's approval, the sense of purpose that came with the charitable work she had embraced. Her hand moved instinctively to her stomach, where a secret grew that would soon reshape not just her world, but the entire line of succession. The doctor's words from yesterday still echoed in her mind, bringing with them a mixture of excitement and terror. She was going to be a mother, and her child would be third in line to the throne. The responsibility of that reality was almost overwhelming. This tiny life inside her would never know a normal childhood, would never have the freedom to make mistakes without the world watching. Yet she also knew the privileges that awaited, the opportunity to serve and make a difference in people's lives. Camilla set down her teacup and walked to her own window, looking out at the busy London street below. Normal people going about their normal lives, heading to offices and shops, meeting friends for coffee, living without the burden of public expectation. Sometimes she envied them their anonymity, their ability to love and be loved without newspaper headlines analyzing every glance and gesture. Her relationship with Charles had been built on genuine affection and shared interests, but it had also been shaped by duty and expectation. She had learned to navigate the complex world of royal protocol, to smile for cameras even when her heart was breaking, to put the needs of the institution before her own desires. The morning light caught the photograph on her mantelpiece, showing her with Charles at a recent charity event. They looked happy together, comfortable in each other's company, yet she knew the challenges that lay ahead. Public opinion was divided about her role in Charles's life, and there were those who would never fully accept her presence in the royal family. Kate returned to her dressing table and picked up the envelope again. Inside was the confirmation she had been waiting for, the medical report that would change everything. She imagined William's reaction when she told him, the way his face would transform with joy and wonder. He had spoken often about wanting children, about carrying on the family legacy while also giving their future children the love and stability he had sometimes missed in his own childhood. The palace was beginning to wake up more fully now. She could hear the sounds of preparations for the day's events, the quiet efficiency that kept the royal household running smoothly. Soon there would be meetings with private secretaries, briefings about upcoming engagements, decisions about which charities to support and which events to attend. But first, there was this moment of quiet anticipation, this space between the before and after of her life. She thought about her parents, who had supported her through the intense media scrutiny that came with dating a prince. They had raised her to be strong and independent, qualities that served her well in her current role. Her mother's words from their last conversation came back to her. "Remember who you are underneath all the titles," she had said. "That's what William fell in love with, and that's what will make you a good mother when the time comes." The time had come sooner than expected, but Kate felt ready for the challenge. Camilla moved away from her window and began preparing for the day ahead. She had learned to find purpose in the smaller moments, the private conversations with Charles, the quiet support she could offer during difficult times. Their love might not have the fairy tale quality that captured public imagination, but it was real and enduring in its own way. She thought about the young woman across London who had captured the nation's heart with her poise and warmth. Kate represented everything fresh and hopeful about the monarchy's future, while Camilla sometimes felt like a reminder of its complicated past. Yet both women were part of the same story now, bound together by their connection to the royal family and their shared understanding of the sacrifices required. The telephone finally rang, breaking the morning silence. Camilla's heart jumped as she recognized Charles's voice, warm and familiar despite the early hour. He was calling to confirm their plans for the day, but she could hear something else in his tone, a lightness that had been missing recently. "I have some news," he said, and she could picture his smile through the phone. "William and Kate will be joining us for dinner tonight. They said they have something important to share with the family." Camilla felt a flutter of anticipation mixed with apprehension. She had developed a cordial relationship with William and Kate, built on mutual respect and a shared desire to support Charles. But family dinners still carried the weight of history and expectation, the careful navigation of old wounds and new beginnings. Kate was now sitting on the edge of her bed, the envelope clutched in her hands. The morning sun had risen higher, filling the room with golden light that seemed to reflect her inner glow. She thought about the conversation she would have with William later, the way she would tell him about the new chapter beginning in their lives. She imagined their child's future, the balance they would try to strike between royal duty and parental love, the lessons they would teach about service and humility, the way they would try to give their children as normal a childhood as possible within the constraints of their position. The sounds of the palace had grown louder now, the full machinery of royal life in motion. Soon her private secretary would arrive with the day's schedule, the endless round of meetings and appearances that filled her calendar. But tonight would be different. Tonight would be about family and the future they were building together. Camilla replaced the phone and felt a smile tug at her lips despite her earlier melancholy. Whatever news William and Kate had to share, it would likely bring joy to Charles, and his happiness had become increasingly important to her own sense of well-being. She had learned to find her place in this complex family structure, to value her role as supporter and confidant, rather than the starring role she might once have imagined. The morning was advancing, and both women began their preparations for the day ahead. Kate selected a navy blue dress that would photograph well at her morning engagement, while Camilla chose a cream-colored suit that struck the right note of elegance without overshadowing others. As they prepared to step into their public roles, each woman carried her private thoughts and feelings, the internal landscape that remained hidden from the cameras and crowds. They were bound together by their connection to the royal family, yet their experiences of that connection were entirely different. Kate felt the weight of expectation balanced by the excitement of new beginnings. Her secret news represented hope and continuity, the promise of a future that would honor the past while embracing change. She was ready to take the next step in her royal journey, guided by love and supported by the family that had welcomed her. Camilla faced her own challenges with the quiet dignity she had cultivated over years of public scrutiny. Her place in the royal family might be more complicated, but it was no less meaningful. She had found her role as the woman who brought stability and comfort to Charles's life, and that was enough. The morning sun continued its journey across the London sky, marking time for both women as they prepared to face whatever the day would bring. Soon their paths would cross at the dinner table, where news would be shared and family bonds would be strengthened or tested. But for now, in these quiet morning moments, each woman stood alone with her thoughts, preparing for a day that would mark another chapter in the ongoing story of the modern royal family. The whisper Kate carried would soon become a celebration, while the tear Camilla had shed that morning would dry in the warmth of family acceptance and the promise of new beginnings for them all. The afternoon brought a flurry of activity to Clarence House as preparations began for the evening's family dinner. Charles moved through the rooms with unusual energy, personally checking arrangements that would normally be left to staff. He had sensed something special in William's voice during their morning conversation, an excitement that reminded him of his own younger days when life still held the promise of wonderful surprises. Camilla watched him from the doorway of the sitting room, noting the way he straightened picture frames and adjusted flower arrangements with the attention of someone who wanted everything to be perfect. This caring side of Charles, the man who worried about family dinners and wanted his loved ones to feel welcomed, was the version of him that had captured her heart years ago. She had spent the day at a local children's hospital, visiting young patients and their families as part of her charitable duties. The experience had been both heartwarming and heartbreaking, seeing the courage of children facing serious illnesses while their parents struggled to maintain hope. These visits always reminded her of the real world beyond palace walls, where people faced genuine hardships that put royal protocol into perspective. During her time at the hospital, she had met a young mother whose 5-year-old daughter was recovering from surgery. The woman's exhaustion was visible in every line of her face, but her love for her child shone through like a beacon. As Camilla sat beside the little girl's bed, listening to her chatter about her favorite cartoons, she found herself thinking about motherhood and the sacrifices parents make for their children. She had never had children of her own, a reality that had shaped much of her adult life. Her relationship with her stepchildren had been carefully navigated over the years, built on respect rather than the natural bonds of biology. She had learned to find fulfillment in other ways, through her charitable work and her role as Charles's companion and advisor. Kate's day had been equally busy but filled with a different kind of energy. She had attended the opening of a new wing at a women's shelter, meeting staff and residents while trying to contain her excitement about the news she would share that evening. Every conversation felt heightened somehow, every smile more meaningful because of the secret she carried. During her visit to the shelter, she had spoken with several women who were rebuilding their lives after difficult circumstances. Their stories of resilience and determination inspired her, reminding her of the strength that women could find when facing challenges. She thought about her own future challenges as a mother in the public eye and drew courage from these women who had overcome so much with far fewer resources. One woman in particular had made an impression on her. Sarah was a single mother of 2 who had left an abusive relationship and was now training to become a nurse. She spoke about her dreams for her children, her determination to give them a better life than the one she had known. Her quiet strength reminded Kate that motherhood was about more than privilege and comfort. It was about sacrifice and fierce protective love. As the afternoon wore on, Kate found herself thinking more deeply about the responsibilities that came with royal motherhood. Her child would be born into enormous privilege, but also into a life of constant scrutiny and expectation. The balance between protecting that child's privacy and fulfilling public duties would be a constant challenge. She remembered her own childhood, the freedom she had enjoyed to make mistakes and learn from them without the world watching. Her parents had provided a stable, loving environment where she could develop her own identity before stepping into the spotlight. Creating that same sense of security for her own child would require careful planning and strong boundaries. William had spent his day in meetings with various government officials, discussing upcoming state visits and trade delegations. But throughout the serious conversations about economic policy and diplomatic relations, his mind kept wandering to thoughts of Kate and their future together. He had noticed her unusual glow lately, the way she seemed to vibrate with barely contained excitement. He remembered their early conversations about children, how they had both wanted a family but knew the timing had to be carefully considered. The pressure to produce an heir was something they rarely discussed openly, but both felt its weight. Now it seemed that pressure might soon transform into joy. The royal protection officers had noticed the change in atmosphere as well. After years of experience, they had developed an instinct for sensing when something significant was happening within the family. The extra attention to security details, the careful coordination of schedules, the subtle increase in staff activity all pointed to an important announcement on the horizon. As evening approached, the various members of the royal household began converging on Clarence's house. Harry arrived first, his usual casual demeanor masking his curiosity about the mysterious family dinner. He had grown closer to Kate over the years, appreciating her calming influence on his brother and her genuine warmth toward him. Harry's own life had been a constant source of media speculation, his romantic relationships scrutinized and analyzed with exhausting intensity. Watching William and Kate build their marriage had given him hope that it was possible to find love and happiness within the constraints of royal life. Their stability had become an anchor for him during his own more turbulent moments. The Queen had also been invited, though protocol dictated that she would arrive last. Her presence at the dinner indicated the significance of whatever announcement was to come. At 87, she had seen many changes within the royal family, and each new development was measured against decades of experience and tradition. She had grown fond of Kate over the years, appreciating her dedication to royal duties and her positive influence on William. The young woman had brought a fresh energy to the family while respecting its traditions, a balance that the Queen valued highly. Her presence had also seemed to settle William, giving him the confidence and support he needed to embrace his future role. Camilla took extra care with her appearance that evening, choosing an elegant burgundy dress that Charles had once complimented. She wanted to look her best for whatever celebration might unfold, and to show her support for William and Kate through her presence and attention to detail. The relationship between stepmother and stepchildren was always delicate, but she had worked hard to earn their respect and affection. She thought about her own announcement years ago when she and Charles had decided to marry. The public reaction had been mixed, with some seeing her as the woman who had broken up his marriage to Diana, while others recognized her genuine love for Charles and her positive influence on his life. Time had helped heal some of those wounds, but she remained sensitive to the dynamics of family announcements and their public reception. Kate stood before her bedroom mirror once again, this time preparing for the evening that would change everything. She had chosen a simple but elegant black dress, wanting to look appropriate for the occasion without drawing attention away from the news she would share. Her hair was styled in loose waves, and she wore minimal jewelry except for her engagement ring and wedding band. The ring caught the light as she moved, its sapphire center surrounded by diamonds that had once graced Diana's finger. She often thought about the woman who had worn it before her, the mother-in-law she would never meet but whose legacy continued to influence the royal family. Diana's love for her sons was legendary, and Kate hoped to honor that memory through her own approach to motherhood. William arrived home just as the sun was setting, his face showing the fatigue of a long day, but his eyes bright with anticipation. He found Kate in their sitting room, and the moment he saw her, he knew that tonight would indeed be special. There was something in her expression, a combination of nervousness and excitement that made his heart race. They had developed their own language of glances and subtle gestures over the years of their relationship, a way of communicating that didn't require words. Tonight, that silent communication crackled with possibility and promise. He took her hands in his, feeling their slight tremor, and knew without being told that their lives were about to change dramatically. The drive to Clarence House was quiet, both lost in their own thoughts about the evening ahead. The London streets were busy with evening traffic, normal people heading home from work or out for dinner with friends. Kate watched them through the car window and felt a pang of nostalgia for that simpler existence, even as she embraced the path she had chosen. Security was heightened around Clarence House, with additional officers posted at strategic points. The media had not been informed about the family gathering, but experienced royal watchers could read the signs. Increased security often preceded significant announcements, and speculation would begin building before the evening was over. Charles greeted them at the door personally, his usual formal demeanor softened by paternal warmth. He embraced Kate with genuine affection, having grown to see her as the daughter he never had. Her influence on William had been profoundly positive, and Charles credited her with helping his son find his confidence and sense of purpose. Camilla appeared beside Charles, her smile warm but slightly nervous. Family dinners were still occasions where she felt the weight of her position, the careful balance required to be supportive without overstepping boundaries. She had learned to read the family dynamics carefully, knowing when to speak and when to simply listen and observe. Harry bounded into the entrance hall with his characteristic energy, immediately sensing the charged atmosphere. His relationship with both William and Kate had evolved into something comfortable and teasing, the easy familiarity of family members who genuinely enjoyed each other's company. He had become fiercely protective of Kate, having seen how she had supported William through difficult periods. The Queen arrived precisely on time, her entrance commanding immediate attention and respect. At her age, family gatherings had become more precious, opportunities to connect with the next generation and witness the continuing evolution of the monarchy. She had learned to value these informal moments as much as the grand state occasions that defined much of her public life. As they moved into the formal dining room, the anticipation was almost tangible. The table had been set with Charles's finest china and crystal, candles providing warm lighting that softened the formal atmosphere. Fresh flowers from the Clarence House gardens added color and fragrance, creating an environment that felt both elegant and welcoming. Kate felt her heart pounding as they took their seats, knowing that within the next few hours, everything would be different. The secret she had been carrying would become family knowledge, shared with those who would help shape her child's future. The weight of that responsibility was balanced by the joy of finally being able to speak freely about her hopes and dreams. William reached for her hand under the table, his touch providing the reassurance she needed. Together, they were ready to take this next step, to transform from a couple into a family and to embrace all the challenges and joys that lay ahead. Dinner conversation flowed easily around the table, touching on recent engagements, upcoming travel plans, and family news. Charles shared stories from his recent visit to a sustainable farming project, while Harry entertained them with tales from his latest charity adventure race. The Queen listened with the patient attention of someone who had heard thousands of such reports over her long reign, occasionally offering gentle observations or questions that showed her continued engagement with their work. Kate found herself contributing to the conversation while simultaneously rehearsing in her mind how she would share her news. Every few minutes, she would catch William's eye and feel her courage waver slightly. This was perhaps the most important announcement of her life, one that would ripple through not just their family, but the entire Commonwealth realm. Camilla observed the interplay between William and Kate with growing curiosity. There was an energy between them that suggested something significant was brewing, a kind of electric anticipation that reminded her of her own younger days, when life held the promise of major revelations. She had developed a keen sense for reading family dynamics, and tonight's atmosphere felt charged with possibility. As the main course was served, Charles raised his glass in a toast to family and to the future. The words carried extra weight somehow, and Kate felt tears prick her eyes as she realized how prophetic his simple statement was. The future was indeed arriving sooner than anyone at the table yet knew, in the most fundamental and beautiful way possible. Harry, ever the observant brother, had noticed Kate's unusual demeanor throughout the meal. She seemed to glow from within, more radiant than usual, and there was a contained excitement about her that made him increasingly curious. He had learned to read his brother's moods and knew that William was barely containing some kind of momentous news. The Queen, with the wisdom of decades, had also picked up on the undercurrents of excitement around the table. Her trained eye missed very little, and she had noticed the way William's hand occasionally moved to Kate's, the protective gesture that spoke of shared secrets and momentous decisions. She waited with the patience of someone who had presided over countless family announcements, both joyful and difficult. As dessert was being served, Kate felt the moment approaching when she could no longer contain her secret. The evening had been perfect, filled with warmth and family connection, providing the ideal backdrop for the news that would transform all of their lives. She caught William's eye one final time and saw his encouraging nod. Standing slowly, Kate felt every eye in the room focus on her. Her heart was racing, but her voice remained steady as she began to speak. The words she had been rehearsing all day suddenly felt inadequate for the magnitude of what she was about to share. Instead, she found herself speaking from the heart, letting love and joy guide her words. "William and I wanted to share some wonderful news with all of you," she began, her hand instinctively moving to her still flat stomach. "We're expecting our first child. I'm about 8 weeks along, and everything is progressing beautifully." The silence that followed lasted only seconds, but felt like hours. Then the room erupted in a symphony of joy and congratulations that Kate would remember for the rest of her life. Charles leaped to his feet with an energy that surprised everyone, his face transformed by pure paternal pride. The future grandfather embraced his son with tears in his eyes, then turned to Kate with an emotion so deep it rendered him temporarily speechless. The Queen's reaction was more measured but no less meaningful. She rose gracefully and moved around the table to embrace Kate, whispering words of congratulation and blessing that carried the weight of her position and her genuine affection. Her joy was evident in the brightness of her eyes and the warmth of her embrace. Harry's response was characteristically exuberant, lifting Kate off her feet in a joyful hug before turning to pummel his brother with congratulations. The prospect of becoming an uncle clearly delighted him, and he immediately began making jokes about teaching his future nephew or niece all the mischief he could manage. Camilla found herself overwhelmed by a complex mixture of emotions. Joy for William and Kate dominated, but underneath was a poignant reminder of her own childless state and the family she had never been able to give Charles. Yet as she watched his face, radiant with happiness at the prospect of becoming a grandfather, she felt only gratitude for being part of this moment. She approached Kate with genuine warmth, embracing her future stepdaughter-in-law with sincere congratulations. In that moment, any remaining awkwardness between them dissolved, replaced by the shared bond of women who loved the same family. Camilla whispered her promise to support Kate through whatever challenges lay ahead, a pledge that came from deep understanding of royal pressures. Charles was already making plans, his mind racing with ideas for how to support the young couple through the pregnancy and beyond. He spoke excitedly about converting one of the rooms at Highgrove into a nursery, about the traditions he wanted to share with his grandchild, about the balance between privacy and public duty that would need to be carefully managed. The Queen, ever practical, was already thinking about the constitutional implications. This child would be third in line to the throne, a future that required careful preparation and consideration. Yet tonight was for celebration, and she pushed aside the formal concerns to simply enjoy the moment of family joy. As the evening continued, the conversation naturally turned to practical matters. Kate's pregnancy would need to be announced publicly soon, given the intense media scrutiny that surrounded every aspect of their lives. The timing would be crucial, allowing the couple some privacy while satisfying the public's legitimate interest in the succession. William spoke about his hopes for his child's future, his desire to provide as normal a childhood as possible while preparing them for their eventual role. He had learned from his own experiences, both positive and difficult, and was determined to shield his child from some of the pressures he had faced growing up in the spotlight. Kate shared her own dreams and concerns, her voice growing stronger as she spoke about the kind of mother she hoped to become. She talked about the importance of instilling values of service and humility, of helping their child understand both the privileges and responsibilities of their position. Her words showed the depth of thought she had already given to this role. The family began discussing practical arrangements. Security would need to be increased, medical care carefully coordinated, and public engagements adjusted to accommodate Kate's pregnancy. Each detail required consideration, from the announcement strategy to the choice of hospital for the delivery. Camilla found herself thinking about the public reaction that would greet tomorrow's announcement. The British people had embraced Kate wholeheartedly, and news of her pregnancy would be received with national celebration. She remembered her own wedding to Charles, the mixed reactions from the public, and felt grateful that this news would bring only joy. As the evening wound down, each family member offered their own special promises to the expectant parents. Charles spoke about being the kind of grandfather who would be actively involved in his grandchild's life. The Queen promised to share her wisdom about balancing royal duty with personal happiness. Harry vowed to be the fun uncle who would provide adventure and laughter. Kate felt overwhelmed by the love and support surrounding her. This child would be born into a family that was eager to welcome them, to protect them, and to guide them through the unique challenges of royal life. The fears she had harbored about royal motherhood were beginning to fade, replaced by confidence in the foundation of love being built around her unborn child. The drive home was quiet, both William and Kate lost in reflection about the evening and its significance. The secret that had felt so heavy that morning was now a shared joy, multiplied by the love of family. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as they prepared for the public announcement, but tonight was theirs to savor. As they prepared for bed, Kate stood once again before her mirror, but this time she was no longer alone with her secret. The woman looking back at her was a mother-to-be, supported by a loving husband and embraced by a family that would help her navigate the unique challenges ahead. The whisper that had begun her day had become a song of joy that would echo through the months to come. William wrapped his arms around her from behind, his hands coming to rest on her stomach where their child was growing. Together they looked into the mirror and saw their future reflected back at them. The next 9 months would bring changes they couldn't yet imagine, but they would face them together, surrounded by love and strengthened by the bonds of family. Across London, Camilla sat in her own bedroom, thinking about the evening and its revelations. The tear she had shed that morning seemed like a distant memory now, replaced by the warmth of being included in such a precious moment. She thought about the role she would play in this child's life, the wisdom she could share, and the love she could offer as an honorary grandmother. The next morning would bring a flurry of activity as the palace machinery swung into action to prepare for the announcement. Press releases would be crafted, security reviewed, and public engagements adjusted. But for now, in these quiet nighttime hours, the news belonged only to the family, a precious secret transformed into a shared blessing. Kate placed her hand over William's, both of them marveling at the life beginning beneath their palms. This child would inherit a legacy stretching back over 1,000 years, but they would also inherit the fresh start that each new generation brings. The future had never looked brighter or more full of promise than it did in that moment, reflected in the mirror of two people deeply in love and ready to become a family. The whisper that had started Kate's day had become a declaration of hope, while Camilla's morning tear had transformed into an expression of joy for the future they would all share together. In one evening, two very different emotions had converged into a single beautiful truth about the power of family, love, and new beginnings.